Okay, we're live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the final meeting for the month of March of the Mahone Bay Town Council. We're all present here again this evening. There is a public contingent watching us on YouTube. And when this meeting is over, before we begin the in-camera session, those who are watching can, if they choose to, ask a question of council about any issue that is discussed tonight. So, thank you for joining us. You have an agenda, council, that was emailed to you. What is your wish for the agenda? You're on mute, Councillor, now.
I'll move the approval of the agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Wilson seconds. All in favor? Councillor, Mr. Hyde, you had a comment?
Yeah, sorry, I know I don't usually intercede on that one. I just, maybe under new business, if council wouldn't mind, we could talk about the date for the introduction of the budget. Usually we do that at this time of year. And Luke and I had some thoughts about upcoming dates, and might be easier to do in this format if council would accept that. So maybe we could add that under new business.
Deputy Clerk looks like she's going to say something. No?
Nope.
Okay. So we have amended the agenda. Is the mover okay with that? And the seconder? Okay. So the agenda as amended to include an introduction or a scheduled discussion around the budget. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Let's go to the minutes of the regular meeting of the 9th of March, a copy of which was in your package. What is your wish, Council?
Mayor, I'd move that Council approve the minutes of the regular meeting of March 9th, 2021.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Kangata seconds. On the question, all in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. We do not have any presentations. Let's go to correspondence. We have a number of information items in our correspondence file. What is your wish, Council? Councillor Wilson.
All right. Motion to receive and file.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Feeney. Comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. Let's go right down to staff reports. Topic that gets near and dear to our hearts at every second meeting of the month. You have the staff report. Anyone have any questions for the CAO on the contents of the report? Councillor Wilson.
Yes, I have two comments, really. I was wondering if from time to time we could get an update on the water usage part of the report. We're still looking at October numbers, and I was kind of hoping we'd see some more recent stuff just to get some idea of the trends. And the second issue is really a comment about the capital item number 5, which is to do with the paving around the fire hall. And I just remind council and staff that we have, I think, semi-agreed to do some work on the parking lot for the tennis club. And they are quite anxious to get something other than that very sharp 4 and 5 inch rock surface that they have now to park on, because some of the people are a little bit reluctant to go in there with, you know, $200 tires. So I wonder if we could take a look at doing something with that before the tennis season starts. And that's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? CAO, please.
Just a quick comment. Definitely, we will have updated water stats, and sorry, I should have checked on that. There may be more recent stats available. They'll be in the next one. As far as the tennis court, I think the thought was that we would take advantage of the opportunity to do the paving at the same time as the paving of the lots for the fire station, and that definitely wouldn't be by the beginning of tennis season. So while there might be a little bit of extra cost to do it, as soon as the plans become available in June, of course, we can't do paving until then. I don't think it would be, massive. So if council is interested, we can get a quote just for the back lot once paving resumes.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I think paving would be wonderful and that would come as it comes, but before you can pave that lot, you have to put a layer of Class A or something on it anyway.
We could just do that now rather than do that
So if
later.
we could do that now and give it a chance to settle, it might make everything work better.
That's a great note. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, my question is just around I had thought we just needed a few days of good weather and would start the work on the clearway stop, and I was just wondering whether maybe my reading of the weather was slightly different and we couldn't start something there. So curious about that.
I knew I would get the question. I did talk to Derek about it, because I'm seeing the same weather, and he talked to our contractor. So I mean, nobody ever likes the answer back. I don't want to be talking about salty fog like Nova Scotia Power got a lot of people complaining about, but essentially that is the argument here, is that if salt is being put out in the mornings, then it's still the temperature is still too variable, and we are still salting in the mornings as often as not, according to Derek. So I mean, I've given the go ahead to Derek. I've given the go ahead to our contractors. I check back in with them every time we get some sunny weather. I'm sure it's just a matter of time now. I can report that everything, equipment, the lights and everything are all standing by. So it really is any time now, but I will keep on with that. I understand it's a priority for council.
Thank you. Councillor Burdick?
Councillor Carver had brought this up in an email, but it also really struck me the number of items that have been forwarded to the Strategy and Policy Committee, quite a few. So I was hoping that we could start that conversation again about having our first meeting, because I'm sure it'll take us a while to get through all of those items.
Thank you. CAO, would you like to respond about, I think we all know about why we're in the position. Do you see an alternative, or do you have a future plan?
Well, it's just been a scheduling issue. We initially proposed a regular meeting date, but council wanted to ensure everybody could attend. So a regular meeting date, often won't work for at least one person. Now we're into the budget, which means, as in prior years, at least 3 or 4 special meetings over the next couple of weeks. So I'm a bit concerned the council would be able or willing to commit to an additional meeting, but I understand the priority on a number of those items are relatively time sensitive. So it's really just about council's willingness to. The first meeting we were going to have with the committee would be essentially table setting, determining how to priority rank the things that are on the list, which are both discussions, because that was part of the purpose, as well as specific policies that were up for review. So that meeting could be fairly brief, potentially. It doesn't, we're not going to get through 16 items. If council wanted to, just kind of get a timeline, it would be helpful to staff to have a timeline to bring those forward. So maybe even just having a daytime meeting to plan that. But again, I understand there's gonna be a lot of time commitments with the budget, and that is something that is time sensitive. So that's my point of view. Staff are happy to assist in scheduling however we can.
Okay. Councillor Feeney?
Mary, I think timeliness really matters as far as getting the first kickoff meeting. In my mind, I know there's a long list of items that have been deferred to that process. I do think that the first and obvious deliverable would be, or discussion would be, for council to be in a position to provide staff with some direction regarding the expectations for the budget process. So, I think that if we had a meeting, it could be short and sweet, but it would give council the opportunity to speak amongst themselves about what the expectations were for the budget process. And then that feedback could be given to, Dylan and Luke, so that we kind of know, based on the item that the CAO is going to be discussing in new business, we end up with a package that everyone expects to see versus a package where there's a lot of surprises. And I know it's kind of an unfortunate position to put the CAO and staff in, kind of not having any idea where council's minds are on that topic. So that, to me, is a very good introductory conversation for that committee.
Thank you. Councillor Now.
Yeah, I know I was one of the ones that had a problem with the dates and stuff, but looking at the calendar, there's, I know Tuesday nights seem to have been the preferable night. This month does have 5 Tuesdays into it, which leaves next Tuesday night pretty much open if it's conducive with any of the other councillors.
That's the 30th of March, I think. Yeah. Anyone else have a comment? Councillor Burdick.
Maybe with that as a suggestion from Councillor Now, we can discuss that further by email perhaps and start that process over again, because that would work for me, but I don't know how it would work for everybody else.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
I'm available. I think if we can all confirm, then it doesn't need to go on email.
I'm available. Penny? I'm sorry, Councillor Carver?
Well, my hand was up to say I'm available.
Okay. Show of hands, who's available for the 30th of March, next Tuesday night? Mr. Hyde, if you raise your hand, someone's going to shoot you, you know that.
No,
But it looks
I
like
can make it.
it looks like we're all available for the 30th of March. So let's plan to have that preliminary budget discussion and maybe even a bit of time for the priority or the strategic session at the same time.
Yeah, if I could just ask, I think we have kind of 2 subjects, as you say, so this is very tight timing for Mo to put an agenda out, so I just want to confirm the agenda so we can get it out immediately. We're going to look at as we quoted, 16 items and talk about the priority ranking of bringing those to the committee and when we're going to do that. And that includes a discussion of some subjects that have been referred for discussion. I know there's been some subjects that council has referred in addition to the policies. Okay. And then we're also going to have some time for discussion about the budget process, in which case I would be happy to move the new business from tonight regarding the budget process to that discussion. That might give us more opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a comment? Councillor Carver.
Just a question, this meeting will be considered to be a regularly constituted meeting of council? So
Yes.
A special meeting.
A special meeting.
A special meeting, but it will be live streamed in the same way that all council meetings are?
I mean, my expectation is that this meeting of council will be a meeting of council. I guess from there, if we're actually in a policy or a committee, rather, we have a committee's policy. This is a committee. Committee meetings are not typically live streamed.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it's a question for council now. Is this first one, because we're figuring out the committee, going to be a special meeting of council, as it was my assumption, or is this one going to be a constituted meeting of the committee? And that would be the distinction at this time, although there's no reason that council couldn't elect to have those committee meetings televised.
Okay. Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, just to weigh in, like, my perspective is we're just having a committee meeting and we're having a conversation amongst ourselves. And if there's any decision making that it comes out of that, it would get referred to council and get ratified at the next council meeting, which 8th or 9th or 10th of April. So in my mind, I don't think we need a special council meeting. I think this is just a committee meeting. But that's just one opinion.
Okay. Counselor Wilson, you agree? Okay.
So then it will be a committee meeting, not televised, and we've got 2 agenda items that I think everybody's clear on now.
Deputy Mayor, you're nodding your head, as is Counselor Burdick and Counselor Now. So we seem to be in agreement that it'll be a committee meeting next Tuesday, 7 to 9. And the clerk will do the agenda and send it round.
And just so that we can note for anybody viewing, where we say it's not televised, that doesn't mean it's not open to the public as a regular meeting of a town committee. There will be a link that is available. People will have to contact, I believe in this case it'd be Mo. Is that okay, Mo? And we'll be able to get that up until the time of the, or sometime immediately prior to the time of the meeting.
Okay. Thank you for that. Clerk?
I have a question because I have been building an agenda as things have been referred to the committee. So I'd just like to clarify then, for this agenda, we're only talking about budget process, and you said there are 2 things. Mr.
Yeah,
CEO.
the other thing is the list of the
Oh.
items. Yeah, we're not going to engage on any of the items.
No.
Okay.
We're going to prioritize them, I assume. I think it's what we had decided. Okay. Anything else on that item? We'll go back to the CAO if there are any further questions on the staff report. Okay, hearing none. Let's go to 6.2, the staff report on write-offs for 2020, 2021. CAO?
So I know it's a little unusual because I'm not a voting member, but I'm going to declare a conflict on this report, and I'm going to ask Maureen to speak to any questions that might arise.
All right, thank you. Noted for the records.
Your worship, we have, council has before them a list of write-offs. And this is something that appears before council every year. It's part of our audit process. The auditors need to see that we do not have bad debts, things that are money's not coming in. So as you can see on your list in front of you, all of these, there's action being taken, but we'll be looking for a motion to approve the list of write-offs for 2020-21 as presented.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Burdick.
I just wanted to note that it seemed to be the lowest total for write-offs of the past several years since 2014, which was interesting to me. I don't have any particular questions there, other than I guess people leave and sometimes they're just never contactable.
Okay.
Generally what happens, there's a point where they are, staff are not able to get anywhere further. And that's when they become, as you've seen the processes that falls after that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
So just noting that the motion that Mo has suggested and the motion in the report are different. And maybe it's the way you read it, Mo. You sort of say that we accept the write-offs, or are we writing off? Are we writing them off? That's
fine. The motion that's in front of you is fine.
okay.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, because this is the first time for me, I was wondering that generally, if somebody I guess has a debt and they leave the town, has it been a trend that that those debts are not recoverable, or is it just a few that happen like that?
Your worship, I realize I've
Yes.
just been answering questions. I shouldn't be, sorry. So it's, no, it's not that simple. There is a year, unpaid bills are written off after being sent to collections and a year has passed without payment. So there has to be a while where there are no payments happening. As Councillor Burdick said, this is a different year. Every year is different. These are bills that we are not able to, the finance staff had a great word for this, but anyway, we can't impose a lien in these cases. Yeah, I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, I think the salient point to the viewers is that our doubtful accounts are incredibly low as a percentage of the overall revenue and the services that we provide. And that the vast majority of these doubtful accounts are under $100. So there's a cost of collecting and there's a law of diminishing returns. So at some point when you have a list of 15 or 20 small doubtful accounts, which are generally, not intentional. It's just changes in people's, moving out of apartments and billing timelines and things like that. At some point that the cost of collecting becomes more than the accounts receivable. So, I think this is good policy. I'm constantly impressed how low our doubtful accounts are. And, I'd move that council authorized staff to book the write-offs. As I said, they're very low relative to the amount of revenue we're talking about, which is several $1 million.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Just want to second that motion.
Okay. Councillor Carver.
Question. I'm just asking about the publishing the list so that it's made public. Is that the usual procedure that this list of accounts is available to the public?
No,
Yeah,
it's not.
clerk.
It's not. There was an error that we caught. Technically, it's not private information, but we do try to use discretion. We caught an error that's been fixed.
Thank you. That answers my question.
In the process of having that discussion, clerk, you had suggested that if someone called town hall and asked the question about someone other than their own accounts, we would give them the information, or did I misunderstand?
There's wording in the routine access policy about being able to get certain financial information. I don't have the policy in front of me right now. I have 6 screens and that's not on one of them. But we could certainly, if anyone's looking for the specific wording, that's in the routine access policy.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the motion? All in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. Let's go to council chambers, furniture and equipment. CAO, are you going to enlighten us of the story of the orange crates and whatnot that we're going to have to sit on in council chambers, or what?
Yeah, I'm happy to step back in here. So we have a report on equipment and furniture for the council chambers. Obviously, we've been making use of the same equipment and furniture for a long time, getting good value, I'm sure, many times past the useful life. Our previous set of chairs, for example, was scavenged from provincial surplus, and we've always done a good job of getting good value. But given as we are doing renovations of the building, staff have looked at a way to get optimal use out of the space with equipment and furniture, and are just kind of making some necessary recommendations now in order to inform the budget preparation and essentially set council's expectations, or go back and do some additional work if needed. So there is a recommendation around essentially a way forward in terms of furniture and equipment, and love to get any questions or comments from council. And there is a motion recommended as well.
Thank you. Anyone have any comments or questions? There's a motion in your package if someone would be of a notion to make it. Councillor Carver?
I'd be happy to make a motion. Is it preferable to do it as 3 separate motions or as one omnibus bill?
I think we could do it as one.
One?
They're
Okay.
all focused on the same activity.
Okay. I would move that council approve furniture and equipment for council chambers as recommended for inclusion in the 2021-25 annual 22 annual operating budget. It says 2025.
Yes, it's a typo. I've been, I guess, writing about the strategic plan so much, I might
Right,
have.
okay. So 21-22 annual operating budget, and that council directs staff to proceed with the installation of the hearing loop wire while the council chambers floor is being redone, and that council directs staff to include accessible hearing solutions in accessibility operational plan anticipated in 2021-22.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor seconds. On the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, let's go down to the the regional cooperation on anti-racism and discrimination. CAO, is you going to speak to that, or the clerk?
No, I can certainly speak to it, and we'll see if we have any questions. So this report needed to come before council because there have been some conversations amongst the municipal units, as the report indicates, arising from the mayor's wardens. Staff support the mayor's wardens process and are sometimes asked to look at a subject. So a discussion took place among staff following up on discussion at mayor's wardens, and that essentially 3 units are looking for a way forward on anti-racism and discrimination broadly, and looking for recommendations to bring forward. And this was considered by those 3 units as a recommendation in terms of a first step in next year. So it was put forward here for council's consideration as it would impact the budget for the coming year.
Thank you. Councillor Burdick.
Seems like a really good idea. It looks like we would be working with Modal and Chester together on it. I did have a question because I think there was a typo in the document and I couldn't tell if it was $300 or 3,000 or 3.
I think it was meant to be 3,000 if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
yes, I see what you mean. Yes, it's got the decimal
Yeah.
for 1,000, but only 2 zeros.
Further to that, then would that be split amongst the different municipalities involved, or?
My understanding is that was thought to be Mahone Bay's portion, but that's not based on a splitting according to a formula by residents or anything. That's based on the number of people who would be thought to be participating in our council size. It's relatively close to the others. It's not as much smaller as our population.
Okay. Any other comments? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I shared with council a link of I guess some work that municipalities in Ottawa have done around equity, inclusion, and to a certain extent anti-racism. And the reason why I shared that is sort of in many ways to highlight that training and capacity building is great. But in and of itself is not the solution. And so from personally, I think having been involved in the, I guess, trying to set up an anti-racism task force for the town of Bridgewater, well, the sense that I get from all of that, and having been involved in, I think, the very first conversation of deputy mayors and CAOs and mayors around the potential maybe to have a regional, I guess, approach to this, is that some municipal units see anti-racism as a very key and important thing that they need to address, and they've stepped out and set up a structure to do that. The remaining municipal units that haven't done that have not got to the point where they feel that that's important. And I think that's a question we need to be having, as opposed to saying unconscious bias training is where we need to go. So I would probably suggest to council, if we really want to go down the route of addressing systemic racism, that we have that conversation and talk about, so what and how, what needs to be done and how can that be done, rather than jump into putting money in training. The other reason to that is that the reason why we have racism is not just lack of knowledge. Yes, lack of knowledge contributes to it, but it's the systemic nature of the systems we have in place that continues to, in many ways, reinforce and sustain racism for a long time. So I would suggest, I would not be very supportive of spending this money for unconscious bias training. If council decides that's where they want to go, that would be great. But I would suggest we bring a conversation about addressing systemic racism, and let's talk about a solution that's comprehensive and might include training as part of the components there. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Councillor Burdick and then Councillor Carver.
It does seem like that brings up a whole lot of questions about how what we should be talking about in terms of agreeing on an approach that works for everybody involved. I wonder if a task force is a good idea, or to start with conversations with municipal units that, with Bridgewater and Lunenburg. I'm not sure how to proceed, but it does seem like it would be worth investigating. And I can see how it would, if there's a training, it could be sort of like checking a box and saying, well, we did that.
Okay, Councillor Carver and then CAO.
Yeah, thank you. I support the Deputy Mayor's comments about doing something that's not just training. Today, I spent an hour and a half with the anti-bias training that AMANS, and NSFM sponsored, and it was interesting. It was useful, it raised questions, but it left me again feeling, well, what now? It sort of, so I would like, and building on what Councillor Burdick is saying about a task force or planning more, could we use, I mean, if there's going to be a session, if there's going to be money put into it, could we use it in a facilitated discussion about what can be done or what might be done, rather than just what feels to me like a very passive anti-bias training. So just putting that out there so that it's more of a discussion amongst those three units who are willing to do something, but to help us talk about what is possible, what steps we can take at this point.
Okay, thank you. CAO?
I just wanted to note, in case it wasn't clear from the report, that the original ask had been for all 5 units to take the same approach they had with regards to accessibility. And Town of Bridgewater and Town of Lunenburg did reject that approach. So I don't think that that is something that we have the option to pursue. So unfortunately, we're left with the 3 remaining units. And that's what staff were asked to look at, is how those 3 remaining units could work together.
Thank you. Councillor Now?
This is more a question for the Deputy Mayor. I certainly agree with what he said about taking the approach. But Deputy Mayor, do you think by us participating in the education thing that's being proposed, would that help us form a path to what you're saying?
But potentially, but what I think what I'm saying is, excuse me, I should have said death by the mayor. potentially what I'm saying is that we don't need to spend $3,000 to get to that place. What I'm saying is that we can have conversations, very good conversations about what the issues are, and come to a conclusion as to where we need to go and what areas we need to pursue about that. And then the other piece is that if it's about education, there's a lot of very good capacity building happening. There are lots of books around racism and how racism affects people, that people can, if there's an interest, people can be able to do that. And it takes time. It's not just the other piece is that when it comes to anti-racism, it's not a one-day session and then you're fully anti-racist, you understand everything, and now so you can go about doing stuff. It's for me, it's a journey. It's a process of understanding concepts and how they affect people, and what your role is in that, and being comfortable with that role, and thinking, well, what else can I do? Well, and incrementally doing that. So I think for me, what I would be looking for from you as fellow councillors is saying, yes, this is something that's of priority for us. We want to address it. Let's find space, and what is that space that we're looking for? And then I know probably there's a question around why the two units probably said, no, we don't want a regional approach. And that would just be one of the conversations in the very initial stages was, maybe let's set up a regional, when the Bridgewater Task Force was being formed, let's set up something regional. But the challenge was, any conversation or decision that would be made would need to go to 5 different councils for a decision to be made. And folks who had been at the table much longer than I have been, were like, well, that's where things go to die, because one council might agree, another one will not. And so you end up not doing anything. So the idea there was to get some good things happening in a particular municipal unit, and if they are seen to be effective, then other municipal units can also adopt. But that doesn't prevent us as a town to sort of saying, we want to address this, and how can we, and maybe who wants to support us in the process also. Because I think also in the community, there might be folks who might be interested in sort of saying, while council is interested in this, well, let's try and support them and help them out in that.
Okay, Councillor Burdick.
I don't know if I want to say this, but I wonder if this is something that should also be forwarded to the policy and strategy committee, because it would be it would have, you know, it would intersect with various policies and that we have or that we're working on, and commitments. Does that seem
List is
reasonable?
getting longer.
Yeah.
Councillor Feeney.
So Mayor, I think, you know, council and staff, you know, benefit from the deputy mayor's perspective and his experience. And I think we all probably share his opinion that, you know, this isn't about the Boy Scout or the Girl Guide getting their patch and getting their badge to wear on their sash. So, you know, just because you attend the, you know, the afternoon seminar at the hotel doesn't mean the issues are addressed, which I think is the deputy mayor's point. As well, you know, we're more than just the town. I mean, we have a lot of relationships, and I kept thinking about, you know, this conversation last night when we were at the Joint Services Board, where we have many affiliates, you know, the LCLC and the fire departments and the Mahone Bay Center and the Chamber of Commerce. And, you know, so I think to the deputy mayor's point, there's an opportunity as a community to take on the task and address the, you know, the fundamental issues, and that may be a different path and a different solution than the one that I think the CAO has been tasked with, which is, you know, try to work collaboratively with our partners in the other municipalities. So what I suggest we do is, one, we ask the CAO to reach out to his peers at the municipality and in the municipality of Chester, and maybe put this initiative on the back burner for us to collectively figure out, you know, what the next steps are. But I think what I'm sensing is that we may be better off by deferring this item and this opportunity to work collaboratively with the other municipalities for a few more months until we get the collective vision together in something we all can agree upon.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, notwithstanding the report from staff, does anyone wish to make a motion?
I'm not making, may I
Okay,
speak?
Councillor Carver, you had another comment?
Yeah, I like the idea of working with the other municipalities, so I hope that doesn't get lost. I mean, I felt that strongly when Lunenburg and Bridgewater set up their task forces. But my reaction was great, but it might be even better if it had been a regional approach. But that's just my perspective. So I'm hoping that that intermunicipal kind of connection can be kept somehow, somewhere along the line.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
So picking up on, I guess, the comments and trying to narrow things down, I think it's important that we refer, I guess, anti-racism and systemic racism as an issue to the policy and strategy for prioritization, I think, as a one step. And then when we think about the issue of regional cooperation, I think that there is still opportunity there to sort of say, whatever we start or whatever we think we will do, there can be options to say, well, maybe there could be regional, quarterly, semi-annual things that bring those things together, that that you still have regional cooperation that is not necessarily very on a day-to-day basis, but it's on a, I guess, on a larger long-term, I guess, view to that.
Thank you. Clerk?
I just wanted to respond to what the deputy mayor was saying. That was definitely the approach that we talked about at the staff level, was looking at this as a project by project. Really isn't the best terminology, but just as opportunities arise, we will stay in touch with each other and say what is happening in each of our units. And if there is something that is of interest to another unit, then we all have that opportunity to discuss if there's interest in sharing or participating or that sort of thing. So that was basically our plan, to stay in touch about what's happening in each other's units and discuss sharing.
Okay, thank you. So would we entertain a motion to refer this item to the Policy and Strategy Committee and keep the lines of communications open with other municipalities? Deputy Mayor, you have a comment?
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Carver? Thank you. CAO?
Just in discussion on the motion, I just wanted to note there was a lot of talk about the importance of trying to cooperate between municipalities. We have two other municipalities that have a suggestion about something to do together, and we would need to have an answer. So when we get together next week to talk about the Policy Strategy Committee prioritization schedule, maybe we'll remember that if this doesn't get included in our budget, we'll probably be sending a message that even the remaining 3 units can't cooperate on one piece of training. So just something to consider in terms of intermunicipal cooperation.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion? Hearing none, call for the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Let's go to refinancing the debenture. CAO?
An exciting one here.
Yes.
So I'm sure nobody around here would remember, but in fact, 15 years ago, we planned to have a 20-year debenture for a water project, and we're 15 years in, and we can't go any further with this one, so we have to refinance it for another 5 years, and Luke's just provided the standard temporary borrowing resolution for that here.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, I'd move the council pass the temporary borrowing resolution in the amount of $92,500.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Now, moved and seconded. Does
And just-
anyone have any questions?
I don't want to have to make Joe read the whole thing out because he's always quite willing to do so. But for the record, you did read the whole thing out.
Yes.
The whole thing is the motion, just so.
Mayor,
Thank
just 2 points on this. I think this is kind of a good case study for the situation that we'll find ourselves in with the fire hall. You know, Luke tried to articulate that last year where, you know, even though we're financing the fire hall over a longer duration, our guarantee of low interest rates are really for the 15-year term. And so in this case, my sense of things, if Luke is here, I'm sure he'd know, is that the financing in the last 5 years is going to be a lot cheaper from an interest rate perspective than the first 15 years.
Yeah.
So this is probably good news for us.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you have a comment?
Just a question from my own knowledge. It says water phase 1. What portion of the water line was that? If somebody knows.
Too bad Carl's not here.
Yeah.
He would know.
He would know.
Hey, you're catching me off guard. 2006 that was even before the work that was done on Edgewater, right? Edgewater was after that.
After, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe that was phase 2. So I don't know about phase 1. I wasn't in the area at the time. I can look into it, but
That was when we were losing 80% of our water.
I'd be curious just to know where it is. So an email will do. I'll appreciate it.
Yeah. Perhaps CAO, you can share the response and we'll all know where phase 2 was. Okay, the traditional land acknowledgement.
Mayor, do we need a vote on that
Oh.
motion?
But we still haven't voted on it. My apologies. All in favor? Motion is carried. The tax collector will stay away from our door for another 12 months. Let's go to the traditional land acknowledgement, the next thing on the agenda. CAO or clerk, who will speak to this? Clerk, please.
oh, do you want to?
Sure.
All right, was it customary that I don't make you do it? But if you're really excited to tell, I'll let you tell it because it's a good news story.
I'm really excited to tell. So as council's aware, you all received a report and approved a public engagement plan that had been put together with a great deal of research about culturally appropriate ways to approach this. I had the great good fortune to be connected with just an amazing counselor from the Gold River First Nation Band Council who took the time to have a conversation with me about where we are, our process to get here, the goals with this. And she told me that while yes, it would be a great idea for people to speak and go directly to the council where the Gold River First Nation covers such a large area, it is difficult. They find it difficult to get together at all for themselves. So she became our champion. She took this to the band council and she took the acknowledgements that we had. She discussed what I had told her about where we were hoping to go and why we wanted to do this. And they have come up with some suggested wording, and this wording has been approved by the chief and councillors and elders in the Gold River First Nation. So as the CAO said, that was a great news story. We found a champion and someone who really took the time to listen to what we were hoping to do, and she made it work for us. So we were super lucky that she crossed my path.
Thank you. Councillor Burdick.
I want to extend my thanks to you and also to Ms. Baptiste. Is that the person for working on that? Because that's a labor on their part that I really appreciate. And I think these are really great statements and they're thorough. I did want to I wanted to ask that once we do proceed with this, if there would be a place on the website for the town to have the statement also. And also maybe on the social media in the sort of the sections where we're describing the town.
Okay.
And maybe there's a way that we could work that into the motion, just to be clear. Mo, what do you think about, say, adding to the end of that statement about the website?
Well, I'm not sure, to tell you the truth, because that was something we had discussed anyway. What would you think? Something on there just that the,
I would just say, like, on the end of the first sentence, and that the acknowledgement be utilized on the town website and social media, or, you know, posted on. I don't know how to make it. It doesn't have to be utilized every time we post on social media, I assume. So just as Councillor Burdick said, there's a place it could be put.
Okay.
I'm sure we can make it work.
Councillor Carver.
Yeah, I was just a little concerned hearing that verbalized, that it would somehow, in fact, limit the use at the moment. If we specify that we post it on the website, it just isn't sitting right with me to do that. I just assumed that would be done without having to include it in the motion, but that's just me.
Okay. Anyone else have a comment? Deputy Mayor?
My comment is simply to say I'm supportive. I'd like to move the motion, and maybe we can that the statement can be used in many other ways as we, after already approving it, we can figure out many other ways to use it.
So your motion is as presented in the recommendation from staff?
Yes.
With the amendment about using it in town website, social media as the opportunities presented?
If that becomes limiting, then I don't want that motion to be that way.
Okay.
I want a motion that will create room for us to use it in as many forums as we need to. So.
We'll leave it the motion as presented.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you? Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Carver? Okay, CAO.
I'm just going to use this as an example where the reason that we look for that kind of direction isn't to be limiting, expecting staff to exercise discretion on when we will make statements on behalf of the council is a slippery slope. I think inconsistent with council's general approach. The council has kept a pretty tight rein and often felt staff should, when it comes to social media, not post unless we're directed to post. So appreciate the sentiment around the table, and this is a recorded session and everybody can hear that the intention here was not to create a sense that staff would be exercising that discretion out ahead of council, for example. So I understand where everybody's coming from, but the reason that we make that type of suggestion isn't to limit and to be consistent with council's direction. It is better to be specific and then later understand that staff are following your direction rather than taking liberties with expressing statements on behalf of the town.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion? Deputy Mayor?
So if we can just get clarity from the CAO, if the motion passes as it is, can I also move another motion separate from the two to sort of say staff can use this on the website and Facebook, so that the first motion is, from my perspective, freeing, doesn't provide limits, and then the next motion provides clarity.
That sounds great to me. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? The motion is carried. Deputy Mayor, you want to make a supplemental?
I can't remember the words, but I'd like to move a motion that staff use the land acknowledgement as approved on our social media, website, and other places. I can't remember what Councillor Bardick said, but those other places, that's something. Are you able to help me out there more?
Just a minute ago, I thought what I heard you say was that staff be directed to share the land acknowledgement, the approved land acknowledgement on the town website and social media.
I can leave it as that, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Burdick? It's been moved and seconded. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, on the motion. All in favor? That motion is carried. Good show. Let's go to the greenhouse gas reduction action plan, the final draft.
I think Deputy Mayor still had his hand up from the previous.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
That's okay. I just wanted to make a comment that, just linked to our conversation previously around the anti-racism side of things. I think my hope is that as council, as we read this, one of the what it leaves in my mind for me is the last line that talks about, I extend to the Mi'kmaq people my respect and desire to build stronger relationship in the spirit and intention of these treaties. And for me, just wanted to remind council that is something that we need to live on an ongoing basis, that in our actions, in our decision making, that we actually do seek to have that relationship. I remember as Mo was trying to go and figure this out, there were some conversations we had around difficult conversations like this. How do you have relationships with various diverse groups, so that when you need feedback, when you need input, that that's not the only time that you're reaching out to them, that you'll continue to have an ongoing relationship. So I'd urge council to maybe think about that as we go along. At which points in our various engagements do we need to continue pursuing those relationships, because they're important to us.
Okay, thank you. CA, our clerk.
To follow up with what the deputy mayor just said, there was another suggested motion that staff had put forward on that land acknowledgement staff report. I don't know whether council's had a chance to see that, if they have any questions.
Oh, apologies, Mo, I should have pointed that out. Yes, it was two-part. There's a motion of thank you there, if somebody would be willing to make that motion.
That was the part about the letter of thanks to the community. Yeah, the very last item on the page. Councillor Carter.
I move that council authorize the mayor to sign a letter of thanks on behalf of the Mahone Bay Town Council to express the appreciation for the expertise of the Gold River First Nation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Feeney. Questions on the motion, Deputy Mayor? You're on mute, Deputy Mayor.
Sorry about that, just talking too fast. Trying to get some clarity on the financial analysis piece. There was an indication that a traditional gift of hospitality be sent as a gesture of respect. Is the letter the gift, or there's something above that they will be getting?
I can respond to that, Your Worship. Yes, the letter is not the gift. Through this process, and even getting up to where I submitted the first report to council, I have been lucky enough to work with some great people who are able to advise me, and we're sort of working on what would be the best way to go. There are a lot of issues right now that I'm sort of bouncing around where they don't get together very often and that sort of thing. So yes, there would be something more than a letter, something modest, but as culturally appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Carver, then Councillor Burdick.
Yes, I'd be happy to amend the motion to, with the addition of, a letter of thanks on behalf of the Mahone Bay Town Council to express appreciation for the expertise of the Gold River First Nation, along with a gift, either at the end of the sentence or somewhere in the middle.
Okay. Councillor Feeney, you second the motion. Are you comfortable with that?
Mhm.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you. Councillor Burdick, your comment.
I had a question, which is, do we need an additional motion also to say that this is the shorter land acknowledgement will be starting each meeting? Or has that already been established previously?
CAO, you'd like to respond?
Yeah, but I know this is Councillor Burdick wasn't around for this because this started about a year ago, back last April. But at that time, when it was originally adopted, it was to be used at the beginning of meetings, and council did not prescribe exactly what meetings it would be used at. So, as the chair of the meeting would be the one to, I guess, make that statement at the beginning of a meeting. But that was the original reason that it was approved.
We could do a council policy amendment that would have that short statement at the start of every meeting. Could we not?
Yeah, you definitely could do an amendment to the council policy to prescribe it. I guess all I was saying is that as it currently stands, it's at the option of the
It's
chair,
not.
but council did
Yeah.
approve the use of it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? The motion is carried. Okay, I have to go back on my agenda list here. I'll find it. There it is there. This is the greenhouse gas reduction, the action plan for greenhouse gas reduction. This is the final report being presented to council. Councillor Feeney?
Mayor, I'd move the council adopt the community GHG reduction plan as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Burdick. Are there any questions or comments? CAO?
Very small comment, just that seeing no questions for me at this time. I just wanted to acknowledge the work that had gone into this from staff, from members of the public who had participated. We've had hundreds of participants in the data collection. We've had dozens of people participating in having their homes reviewed for heat pumps, and even about a half dozen who have gone ahead and made installations in the first quarter of our new heat pump program. So just really exciting and excited to see this moving forward.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion? Councillor Wilson? No? Calling for the motion? Deputy Mayor? No? All in favor? The motion is carried. Okay. Let's go to the Town of Mahone Bay Strategic Plan, 2021 to 2025. Comments, CAO.
Do you want me to introduce them? I know it's here's the staff report, so I guess I can just briefly speak to the fact that although this is the staff report is intended to present the work that council has done in a facilitated process. And at this point, what we're looking for a recommendation, or we're making a recommendation, we're looking for a decision on, is the final step of that process, which was discussed back in January, public engagement plan around the draft strategic plan. So happy to take any questions if there are any.
Anyone have any questions? No? Councillor Carver?
I'm confused. Are we approving the strategic plan, or are we approving the public engagement plan, or both?
If that's a question to me, I can say what we're recommending here is that we approve the engagement plan because council previously deferred the engagement plan with an indication to bring it back up on the agenda when the strategic plan was in its final draft stage. So that's why it's here now. So that's what's being recommended, but it's council's prerogative.
So after I'm sorry.
So approval of the strategic plan itself will happen at a different time. Is that correct?
So the engagement plan that's been put up there is quite similar to the one we just used with the GHG engagement or GHG reduction plan. So essentially, just like that one, we'd carry out a presentation session to the public, receive any feedback in relation to it, report that back to a subsequent meeting of council, and then council would at that time, in consideration of that process, be in a position to adopt the plan. And that's if the engagement plan as presented were accepted. Of course, that's still council's.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this will be the public's opportunity to be introduced to the strategic plan and have an opportunity to comment. And then at some point after that, council will again embrace the plan and actually approve it.
That's what's being presented here for council's consideration.
Yes, okay. Deputy Mayor, you had a question?
Yeah, so my question around that is that to a certain extent, approving the engagement plan would be sort of saying that the draft we have right now, we are fully comfortable with it going to the public, right?
Yeah, going to the public
I
as
think
a
so.
draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think from my end, we haven't fully resolved that. At least on my end, I don't feel that we've fully resolved that.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
I have to join Councillor Carver in her confusion. I apologize, I misread this. I thought, based on the agenda, that we were approving the strategic plan. And I thought we agreed when we started this exercise that we were not in need of any more public input because we had several very large scale public engagement processes in the last year and a half or so that were all grist for the mill to create this strategic plan. Now, if we're going back to ask the population, what do you think? The danger is they're going to tell us. And if they tell us they don't like it, what are we going to do? Go back and redo it?
Councillor Feeney.
Yeah, so I'd share some of Councillor Wilson's sentiments. I think we're getting closer. We've done a lot of heavy lifting. We've made an investment of time thus far, and I think there've been a lot of terrific edits. I think another round of edits with some final, punctuation points and commas, as Councillor Burdick would know well as some substantive issues, are worthwhile taking one more look at the final document to make sure we're all comfortable with it being at a point where it can go to the public. Now, to be fair to the CAO and staff, they were provided some timelines that got us to the point where it needed to be on tonight's agenda. But I do think that, it's reasonable, given the heavy lifting from our facilitators and from councilors across the board here, that we can probably get there in the next few weeks. So I'd suggest that if there's an opportunity, if we want to do another round of review as a team, I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think the last session, there were some edits that were added, but we haven't collectively gotten together and reviewed the document line by line as a collective council. So I'd suggest we do that, and then we'd be in a position to move it to the next step. And I think, to Councillor Wilson's point, the next step, I think I'm not sure how much feedback we're going to get or how much feedback we're actually asking for, given how the process has unfolded. I think this is more of the baby's born and here it is, versus versus a consultation. I really don't think at this point we're in that mode, are we?
I don't think we're in the consultation mode, but I think we have made commitments to our citizens to engage with them and make them aware of some of the key things that council is embarking on.
Mhm.
And to the deputy mayor's comment, I think it would be more reasonable to, if we as a group are not comfortable with this document as it stands, if there is some more fine tuning to do, then let's do it and then take it to the public. Deputy Mayor?
And the way I understand what you're taking to the public is sort of to try and figure out if there's any big thing that we might have missed, right? In all our deliberations, in all that consultation, we've narrowed it down to some certain strategic focus. Is there something big that we've missed, and are we in a position to find a way to include it? I don't think it's reviewing and sort of picking it apart, so to speak. At least that's my understanding of when we started off saying, well, we're not doing the public engagement at the front end of it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Feeney?
Mayor, just to round out the conversation, I don't think we can ask staff to meet with council in another evening or in another weekend to be reasonable to their own, work-life balance. So I'd suggest we have one more 1-hour session sometime in the next 2 weeks before the next council meeting. And we all come to the meeting prepared to make the compromises needed to get the document to a point where we can take the next step and provide and get it to the engagement process. So to be fair to Dylan and the staff, I'd suggest that we pick some noontime over the next 2 calendar weeks, and we try to make that happen before our next council meeting, if possible.
Okay. How does that sit with you, Council? Councillor Burdick?
That sounds really reasonable to me. It did look like there were some pretty substantial ideas to work on to be included and worked out there from the various emails. So that makes I would be totally into that as a solution.
Thank you. Councillor Carver, and then CAO.
Just to be clear, that the engagement process that we're looking at tonight and that we're being asked to vote on tonight does include a public hearing via Zoom, digital engagement, written engagement, providing information through media, website, social media, and other, could be code red mass notification system. So it does include a public hearing, at which point at public hearings we usually receive input from the public, and then it's up to council to decide how to use that input. So that's what we're being asked to vote on tonight, is the public engagement.
And I'm suggesting that we defer that discussion until after we have a document that we're prepared to share with the public. And I don't think we're far away. And I can imagine how frustrating it is for staff to know that we were trying to hit the April 1st deadline, but I think we're really close. We just need another one final push to get to the document to a point where all of council's comfortable.
Okay. So, CAO?
I just wanted to thank Councillor Feeney for those comments, but also to acknowledge that the idea of going to a deadline was to support council's process in terms of starting the annual budget. And, so council, at the end of the day, it's council that we're trying to serve by that timeline. So we're happy to modify it if that serves council's plans. I just wanted to note with the budget, it doesn't sound like anyone is, absolutely just eager to get into the budget as soon as you possibly can, but it was my intention to have confirmation of a final draft strategic plan document that could be incorporated into the budget presentation, so that we're actually explaining in the budget how it links to the strategic priorities of council. And so just just so that everybody would be on the same page, we'll have a further discussion next week as we've now scheduled to do so. I'd suggest that we have the first budget session and introduction of the budget after council's next meeting, if council's going to take to the next meeting to make that determination around the final plan draft. And we would be prepared otherwise to have the budget introduction just a little bit prior to council's next meeting. But our typical schedule would actually see it later. We were just we're always trying to get just a week or two earlier on the budget introduction timeframe. Again, because council has in the past indicated a desire to do that in a timely fashion at the beginning of the fiscal year. So, you know, I just want everybody to understand that the way I would see this, I think it makes sense to do this. The reason we weren't doing it was just to adhere to council's, you know, professed desire for an early budget adoption, and that maybe next week when we talk, we can have a budget schedule that takes into account getting to the end of the draft strategic plan process before we begin the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. So, let's have a motion to defer this item until the next meeting. Somebody want to make that motion? Councillor Feeney, do we have a seconder? Councillor Now, you've heard the motion. Questions on the motion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, I'd move that council direct staff to schedule a meeting in the next 2 weeks to have a final review of the strategic plan, the 2021-2025 strategic plan.
Okay. Thank you. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Okay, moved and seconded. Mr. Hyde?
Earlier this evening, we had a conversation to clarify the status of a meeting. So with everybody's forgiveness, I'm going to ask again. In the past, the strategic planning sessions have been just that. So would it be a strategic planning session, or would it be an actual special meeting?
Just a strategic planning session.
Just a strategic planning session.
Sorry.
Good point. Okay. All in favor? Motion is carried. Let's go to item number 7. The Lieutenant Governor's letter of recognition. I'm just going to bring it up on my big screen here. This came in from the Lieutenant Governor a couple of weeks ago. It's the Community Spirit plaque that's been awarded to the town of Mahone Bay because of the efforts of the town in supporting their citizens over the last 12 months during the COVID-19 pandemic. And for a lot of Nova Scotians, it's the other events like in Portapique and the helicopter crash and the snowbird crash, where other Nova Scotians were horrifically impacted. The Lieutenant Governor announced the creation of the plaque in celebrating a community spirit and volunteers at the volunteer ceremony on the 28th of September 2020. And the plaque is, the commendation on the plaque is in English, French, Mi'kmaq, and Gaelic. So it covers the 4 key languages in Nova Scotia. And I think there's a picture of it in the package. Is there not, Clerk? Yeah. So there is a picture of the plaque as well in the package, and the metal, the thing that we were presented with, the metal plaque, it will be mounted on a wooden base, and it will be affixed to the walls in a suitable location in Town Hall. Kind of a nice looking piece, actually, but I think the 4 languages make it doubly unique for Nova Scotia. So I don't think there's any action there that we need. Next are the committee appointments. Clerk, you want to tell us about that?
Your Worship, Council has received 2 applications, one for the vacant position on the Asset Management Committee and one for one of the 2 vacant positions on the Heritage Advisory Committee. I received some scoring feedback from council, and if you click the link on your meeting, on your agenda, you'll see that the total scores are now there.
Okay, Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, I'd move the council appoint Ann McPhail to the Heritage Advisory Committee.
Seconded by Councillor Carver. Questions on the motion? All in favor? The motion is carried. Do we have another motion?
Mayor, I'd also move that that the council appoint Tim Mary to the Asset Management Committee.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor seconds. Questions on that motion? All in favor? That motion is carried as well. I think the only one we're missing now is the provincial government representative to the Police Advisory Board, Clerk.
We have that, and we do still have one open position for a community representative on the Heritage Advisory Committee.
Okay. So we're getting there, slow but sure. Any other comments on that topic? Okay, let's go to committee reports. We have 2. One is from the Cemetery Committee, a particularly lively committee, I might add, in spite of the topic at hand. And I think we have a couple of motions in that one.
There were a couple of recommendations there. They're highlighted in the minutes. I can
Yes.
put them up.
It has to do with operating surpluses and the budget for 2021-22.
Yes.
If somebody would like to make one of those.
Happy to make that motion, Mayor. Is there a chance we can bring those up?
Would you like me to read it to you?
I offered to, Mo, you
Just-
better release the screen.
Sorry,
share.
forgot to print this one out.
Okay, that any operating surplus within the 2021 cemetery budget at year end be contributed to the Perpetual Care Fund. That's the first motion. Councillor Feeney, Councillor Burdick, are you seconding? Yes, okay. Anyone have any questions or comments on the motion?
Mayor, that like historically, that's been the convention, at least since 2012, for the Cemetery Commission, is that when we do have a modest operating surplus, we don't have a policy, but our practice has been to contribute the operating surplus to the Perpetual Care Fund. And up until 2019, that was the sole driver of incremental contributions to the Perpetual Care Fund.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a comment on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor of that motion? The motion is carried. The second motion reads that council approve the 2021-22 budgets as presented for both the park and the Bayview cemeteries. Who would make that motion?
That one again, Mayor.
Again, and Councillor Now seconds it. On the second motion, are there any comments or questions?
Mayor, I guess the only point is that this is a recommendation from the committee to council to forward this information for budget deliberations. So there will be an opportunity to review the cemetery budget on a line-by-line basis at that time.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, do you have a comment?
Yes, just if that's the case, shouldn't the motion be to refer that to the budget process rather than approve the budget? Because if you've approved the budget, then you're just saying we'll pick it and put it as is.
Fair enough.
CAO?
It certainly can be either way, but the cemeteries being independent of the town, it's more equivalent to approving the Remo budget, which we did, or Region 6. So it would essentially lock that in. But you could do it either way. So the cemetery committee, I think, reasonably would recommend that it be approved, because like Remo or Region 6 board, they're just looking at their own operation. But council's got no other external factors driving this one. So you have your prerogative to refer to budget if you wish.
Thank you, Councillor Feeney.
And again, like the budget is crafted on a break-even basis. So the town obviously is making a significant operating grant based on the operational costs of the cemeteries. So while 2020-21 was a little unusual in the fact that we had COVID reduced some of the operating expenses, for example, like the tree trimming and the grass mowing was, that's really because we were doing less of that due to COVID. That was the generation of the surplus. But going forward, you wouldn't notionally expect to have an operating surplus in that space. And council's already made changes in the previous 2 years regarding the revenue from plot sales going directly to the cemetery, going right to the perpetual care fund. So, like, I think what's meaningful for the council to know is that essentially the budget's based on the expectation of break even from an operating perspective.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Thank you. Okay, on the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Let's go back to the Asset Management Committee. 19th of March. These are draft minutes. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Wilson?
Sorry, Your Worship, I just was going back to the previous the cemetery committee for a minute. There was a third recommendation. Does that need to be moved to get into the budget? Or is it okay the way it is?
Just let me have a look.
It's a replacement of the picket
fence.
fence.
Mm-hmm.
It was highlighted to be made if somebody wants to make it.
Well, I'm happy to make that motion that the replacement of the picket fence at the Bayview Cemetery should be done with a long-lasting composite material, preferably white, to be included in the council's upcoming budget.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Burdick? On the motion, are there any comments?
Just Mayor, on that comment. So that is a proposed, appropriation that would be reviewed by council and weighed out against all of our other capital priorities. So we'll have a good conversation about that. So I wouldn't want, unlike the operating budget, this is a decision the council will have a chance to weigh in on and weigh off against all of our other priorities. So I think, I hope we can get some support for it, but on the other hand, we've got a lot of priorities. So we'll see where it ends up next month.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
You sort of answered the question I have partly, but I was just curious why that did not go into the operating budget that we've just approved. There was no way to sneak it in somehow.
Well, I believe the capital item hasn't been. We don't have a budget for the capital for the fence, Francis. But I think it's it's tens of thousands of dollars. Okay. Versus the operating grant is more like $20,000. So I think that investment needs to be weighed off against all of our other priorities as well.
Great. Okay. My other question was to Councillor Wilson. Why white? There was he inserted white into the motion, and I was wondering whether there was something around that.
Just to match the existing.
Good.
Yeah, I do want to note we do have heritage photos of the old picket
Mm.
fence going back as long as the cemetery's been there, or at least as long as there've been pictures. It was always a white picket fence. It used to be on Clearland Road as well, and then
Mm.
at some point was replaced with chain link.
Clerk?
I'd just like to clarify, then the motion is to include preferably white, is in the wording of the motion? Is that what you
I'm
were
happy to
thinking?
leave that out.
Okay, thank you. I thought it was an aside, but I wanted to be really
Yeah.
sure what the
It was
motion
an
was.
aside.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the motion? All in favor? The motion is carried. Okay. Clerk, was that the question you had when Councillor Wilson had his hand? Oh, okay. All right. Let's go back to the Asset Management Committee. Anyone have any questions? There are no motions in that one. So, the new business intro to the budget, we
I
have,
think Deputy
we
Mayor
wiped
had his
that
hand
out.
up on that
That-
last one.
Who did?
I think
Oh.
the Deputy Mayor had his hand up.
I can't read here and I can't see him at the same time. Deputy
No.
Mayor, please.
No worries. I just wanted to clarify something. I was absent because I sent regrets. It was I couldn't make it. So do we capture that in minutes as regrets or just absent?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that it should note with regret. We did
With
have a
regret.
discussion about that previously. Just
Thank
I
you.
don't think that you're deemed to be absent if you've advised in advance that that's where the regrets comes from, right? Okay. All right. Okay. That would appear to be the end of our agenda. So, is there anyone in the public?
We have 7 people watching the feed right now, but we have no questions, Your
No
Worship.
questions? Okay. All right. With that, I would entertain a motion to go in camera, and we will stop the public feed and we will stop the recording at that time. Moved by